Hey everyone, happy Monday. We're excited to come back to you live into the community on YouTube and several other places. And we're talking about a hot topic, a big knee deeper feeling right in the center of the chest topic.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when we ask therapists about marketing and how they feel about marketing or even just the word being presented. Like 80% of therapists say fear, but it's needed. It's like this necessary evil. So hopefully today we can kind of debunk why you shouldn't be afraid of marketing and why you need to kind of do the counterintuitive thing and do your own marketing really upfront, especially if you're new or you've never. We call it cracking the code on marketing, but really it's just like have you established a channel that you are now doing good enough at that you can consistently create business from.
Yeah,
So
I think it's funny is I didn't know we were going to be doing this topic when we had a call earlier today. It was a mindset sort of process inside of our internal program, and I did it on the topic of imperfect action, specifically imperfect action because you're trying to do perfect action because you're afraid, right? You're afraid of how you'll be perceived. You're afraid of how imperfect it's going to be shown, right? And you want to wait, you want to hold it all in until it's perfect, until it's ready to go, until it feels right. And one of the reasons why you're afraid, I'm afraid, we're all afraid at different points in our business is because we're putting part of ourselves on the line. We are saying something about ourselves. We are putting an ask out there and it feels vulnerable because we don't know if anyone's going to take us up on it. We're spending money. We don't know if we're going to see return back to our business. Whatever way that we want to chop it, I just want to say the fear actually makes a lot of sense because it involves doing this well or doing this at all, right? Not even well, involves a lot of vulnerability. And it involves putting something out there that you never had to put out there previously to be successful. But now you're asking for something else. Now you're asking for your business to grow in a way it hasn't had, for clients to find you in ways that they've never needed to. And that requires risk, that requires vulnerability. And in that, inadvertently, will have fear, probably because you've never done it before.
yeah, I think I want to add on to that as well. Me as a novice business owner, so back, maybe 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I I was almost against marketing. It felt like spammy to me or something, but it's because I kind of, in my own way, had my own traumas around marketing and sales, and there's a lot of issues there that isn't what you are going to be doing. So I think one, you don't have to be like the worst case scenario. Okay, so you can take the activities and you don't have to be the bad of it. And then beyond that, I felt like I needed to learn so much around the topic of marketing to be effective at marketing and advertising. But plainly, that's not true. Like, quite frankly, you guys are service based businesses. If people need and want your services, people need to know that you are a service provider for the service. And so it's you don't have to complicate it with all of this marketing stuff that could happen, right? You don't have to be an expert at marketing to market yourself. So I would just add those two little topics maybe to our list as far as like fear goes and debunking the fears. You don't have to put in a year or 2 years of knowledge. And in fact, sometimes the people that I've worked with that have more marketing knowledge actually end up crippling themselves more because they think they know. But if you think you know and you haven't been able to get results, then clearly you think wrong, right? So oftentimes not knowing actually is a bigger benefit to yourself than knowing, and going out there and just doing is oftentimes way better for you.
Yeah. I think it's a tough scenario though because it feels like you have to have that knowledge. it feels like you have to not have this feeling or not be afraid in order to take that next step or take the action that you want. And I think one of the things that I want to just suggest, and this shows up as good advice in many circles, it's be afraid and do it anyways, right? I think before we even talk about how to reduce that fear, how to get rid of it, how to replace it with different feelings or emotions, that might not be possible. But being fearful, right? Being afraid of whatever the outcome it is that you are afraid of, it's possible to feel that feeling, have that feeling, and still do the action anyways, right? Something like networking. Like when you're writing that message and you're struggling to write the perfect message to hit send on, the consequence is one of two things. You either never network to begin with because you're afraid of being rejected. You're afraid of someone not responding to your message. You're afraid of someone cussing you out saying, why on earth would you contact me about wanting X, Y, and Z, right? One, all of those scenarios are very unlikely, but they feel super true, right? I literally just did this last Thursday where like I was sending someone that I respect, that I wanted to work with, like a networking message, and I didn't send it that day. I sent it today when I gave myself the pep talk of, you don't want to do this, you're uncomfortable and you feel vulnerable by doing this. This is an imperfect message and do it anyways, right? Because it's worthwhile doing. So I just want to say that there's space to just be afraid and do it anyways, because the business you're building is more important than the fear you have in this moment. The
I can't
business
remember.
you're building is more important than the fear you have in this moment. And remind yourself that, tell yourself that, right? And do it. Um, and you'll unlock the ability to do more and more and more.
I can't remember who said it, but they hate you before they love you, is the saying. And so the idea is that expect the hatred up front, uh, and then they turn around and they end up loving you later. So the idea behind it is just be consistent, do the things that you know you're supposed to do, expect that you're going to be hated first and then loved and admired later. And I feel like in a lot of instances too, for some really really big people, that's how it kind of goes. I know for I follow one of my mentors. I hated him at first. I was like, yeah, he's exactly like, this is exactly who I don't want to be. And then as I listened to more, as I listened to more of his stuff, I was like, he's got some good stuff. To be honest, like maybe I didn't like him because he was saying the stuff maybe I didn't want to hear. And so it's kind of interesting. I guess I would be okay with moving on to why you absolutely need to do your marketing, especially when you're new.
Yeah, and I think this goes hand in hand. So to transition this, I think the solution that a lot of therapists think is apparent or obvious or helpful is to outsource their marketing in order to overcome or ignore or get past the fear. Uh, you know, I I'm afraid to do this, or I'm uncomfortable doing this, or I'm afraid to do this because I don't know how to do this. It's just the fear of unknown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get someone else to do this for me, right? And that's the solution for many, many, many of the therapists that we talk to overcome this fear. My solution to you, or my proposition, is to grow through the fear, because that's what business owners do and good practice owners do, is to grow through the fear. And part of that growth for most of you will involve doing the marketing yourself. And let's, Attilio, unpack why that is.
Yeah. So, guys, I mean, I'm sure that I feel like this is common almost. It's like there is no reward if there is no risk. So there is no reward if there is no risk. I'm not using that as the topic builder, but what I am saying is, um, if you don't have the time and diligence to invest in understanding your market, the time and diligence to understand how to communicate how to communicate your values to your market, if you do not have the ability or time or skill to figure out what kind of like olive branches can you extend to your marketplace, or if you even need to do that, if you don't have that time, if you don't have the energy to expend, I'd say that one, you probably shouldn't be in business. You probably shouldn't be in business if you don't have the time or the will to understand your marketplace and how you serve. You probably should not be in business. But two, that's the exact thing that you need to unlock in order to like transact business. So if people don't find you desirable, if you're doing the exact thing as everyone else is doing, so if you can't spark that fire, no amount of money that you spend on advertisement, no amount of blogs that you write will communicate to people efficiently enough that it will reward you in a manner that's proportional to the effort that you're putting in. So, when we're looking at doing your own marketing, I could take something from someone else. We could take something that works for someone else and innovate on that thing so that it works for you. Because no two things ever typically work exactly the same. So if you take a framework and innovate on it, there's a good chance that you can find success. However, if you don't actually do it, and you're going to have someone else just offload and try to have them figure it out, it's going to be the same as if you were just trying to figure it out, except in this instance, you're paying for someone else to figure it out for you when you probably should have done some of the groundwork and just figured it out yourself. So it's kind of an interesting scenario,
Yeah.
but that's how I'd look at it.
I I have a toddler right now. He's about to turn 2, so we're entering in what they would say the terrible twos. And I'll use this analogy because I know many of you are parents. There's a fundamental difference between dropping your kid off of daycare and passing the buck on your responsibility and emotional involvement in your child's life and their future, right? One is a function that produces a time and a result of childcare, right? And you know that their needs will be met. That's the equivalent of hiring someone to do your marketing. They only have the ability to perform a very direct, defined outcome, right? But at the end of the day, your business success relies on your responsibility, your knowledge, and your ability. Now, are you going to have resources and get help from family members and grandparents and hire providers to watch your child? Like 100%, we're doing all of those things. But my kid is throwing food at the dinner table now, right? At mealtime, and it's doing all these other things. And I'm the one that gets to figure out all of that stuff. And I have to grow through, like my wife and I were talking the other night about like, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to do it perfectly. We've never done this before, right? You've never done your marketing. You don't know how to do it perfectly. You've never done this before, right? And I'm not saying that there aren't people out there, there aren't daycares to help you do parts of your business to help grow through some of those things, but that doesn't pass the skill of growing through those feelings and coming up with the ability to run and build your business the way it's supposed to be built, because marketing is an essential piece of a good, healthy business. Sales is an essential piece to a good, healthy business, right? Fulfilling on your service, doing the therapy is an essential piece to a well-run therapy practice. All of those things are required. And if you leave your fear, your little, I never want to do this, I never can do this, and you never let that grow up to be any bigger or stronger than it is, so you can do the marketing or understand it in the way that Attilio says and some of those things, then ever managing a service provider or doing any other things will never be a supplement, will never cover the gaps around those moments, around those service providers, around those other people doing bits and pieces of your marketing, right? So we have to grow up, grow through, and do much of it ourselves or acquire much of that knowledge just to build the business that we want to build. And that is sort of the cost of owning a practice, the cost of having a business. Yeah.
I'm gonna use your same analogy, like the daycare analogy. Um, Guys, there's nannies out there that can totally parent the heck out of your kids. They can make
Yeah,
your kid a good kid, right? There's like we've all maybe we've seen the what is it, the super nanny or whatever it is.
right.
Um, Basically, these are people that just like do it for you, right?
Yeah,
But think of the price difference between a super nanny and a daycare.
yeah,
So think of the price difference between a super nanny and a daycare. I mean, exponential price difference there. And then two, uh, so to relate that, your done for you service that will also figure out all of your marketing for you, that will also like go all the way deep for you. I mean, those are expensive services, usually reserved for like large companies that can afford information gathering for the marketing agencies and a lot of autonomy and blah 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 blah. So there, like, it's expensive to have someone do it entirely for you. But two, the outcome that you get, the super nanny's outcome, the outcome that you get might not be what you wanted. So, like, if I think you probably see the representation in like the movies where the maid or the nanny is like the one raising the rich person's children, and like the kid speaks Spanish because the nanny was Spanish and she was speaking in Spanish. And so you're like, oh, I could have never done that. And it's like, maybe that's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, depending on how you're looking at your stuff. And so if you pay for someone else to do it, they might do it in a way that you don't want to do. And maybe for someone else to find success with your situation, you have to be really flexible. And so it just works better if you just figure it out and do it yourself. You get what you want. You may have to work with the market or figure it out, or you may have to level yourself up a little bit. But the outcome that you get is going to be something that you're okay with living with. It's going to be a win-win situation for you. And there's always ways to kind of tweak it and twist it, especially if you understand the fundamentals of how your business runs and the fundamentals of what the marketplace wants. There's always ways for you to tweak and twist it so that it works better depending on the situation. You know, if you're like, I'm a solo now, but maybe one day I want to be a group. Well, it's like, okay, great. So maybe instead of you taking the calls, maybe you make a video online, and people have to go through the video, then book a time. And so, like, there's always little tweaks and twists and turns, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't sit down and listen to the people that you're talking to.
yeah. I think my final comments on this is it's a little bit awkward whenever we have these types of talks with our community because for many, many years we have been service providers in the space, but we also do a lot of like done with you and coaching for you guys to do it yourself. So clearly, right, we're not against you at the end of the day hiring someone to help you with your marketing, right? But it's the difference between it being a support element and a function element that helps you run your business and bucking the responsibility and choosing not to fill a knowledge gap that you really need to have on a knowledge. And you get the knowledge usually by executing for a certain length of time, by bucking that away from yourself, and a huge detriment to a lot of practice owners' success, right? Because they don't know what they don't know. So then things happen and they don't know why they're happening or why they're not growing or why they're not headed in the right direction, even if they're doing the right things, so to speak, like posting a blog or attempting to run a paid ad or, whatever it is. So I just want to encourage you that there's 100% fundamentally a time and a place to hire people and to outsource work. You are not strapped to your doing your marketing for the rest of your life. However, for most new business owners, and this goes for solo practices and group practices alike, usually the work begins with you and then grows out of the excess, not the limitations that you're currently feeling, right?
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. Don't be afraid, guys. Go out there and do, and just listen. Listen to what the market has to say. So.
We'll see you guys next time for a deeper, probably more logistical deep dive on some additional marketing things that you can do next year for